Sunday, January 19th, 11:05 a.m. I feel weirdly good today, like as a human being. Aaron's response, you are a good human. I think I'm used to feeling horrible all the time when I train.
Hi. How you doing? Good. How are you? Not too bad.
I'm getting older and I also don't feel very good and sleep horrible. And so admittedly, and I had this chronic cough and stuff. And so I haven't had blood work done ever. I don't think I've ever had blood work done in my whole life. So I went to the doctor and I asked for basically the Cadillac of blood tests. I want to test everything, seeing as I haven't really done any testing. I might as well make up for it now. For the most part, everything looks pretty good, healthy, decently healthy. Otherwise, everything looked okay, except my A1C. I came up at 5.9, which is in the pre-diabetic range. I think 6.4, 6.5 is the threshold to being diabetic. And so that was, quite surprising and something serious, because diabetes is not a disease that you want to mess around with. And here we are making yet another video about this, but this time I'm actually starting to get, I probably could have got this feedback a while back had I went and actually tested myself, because I've been showing symptoms. I mean, for instance, it would not be uncommon for me to pee 8 times in 8 hours of sleep, meaning I'm not sleeping. Because I'm the type of person who, when I go pee, I also wake up a bit. And then, we're talking, little sleeps of 45 minutes times 8. And eating candy and, sugar in the middle of the night, having intense cravings. Sleeping just absolutely horrible when I do sleep. And this is what I've existed in now for, well, I've slept horrible the entirety of Aaron and I's relationship, and we began seeing each other in 2011. So I'm at 14 straight years. But the last time I ate even decently well for any continuous period of time really was beyond my memory at this stage, 20 years ago probably. So, but I mean, in my defense, I guess, it is sort of the way of the Western world, convenience food, processed food, not very nutritionally dense food, calorically high, macro high, salt, fat, sugar high, nutritionally fairly devoid food. So anyways, I'm fully immersed in the culture for sure. And I am as lazy as they get with regards to eating. It's all related, my laziness is related to the way that I have been training and my lack of, let's say, keeping training in a, positive, absorbable manner. So anyhow, then I put on the continuous glucose monitor and it was accurate. The A1C was accurate. I wore the continuous glucose monitor for 10 days. And even after making some dietary changes to eat to control blood sugar, meaning lower glycemic foods, my 24-hour glucose average for the first few days was 123 nanograms per deciliter, as I believe the terminology, which is almost exactly in line with that A1C value of 5.9. So it was totally accurate. So I have been floating around. My blood's been floating around 24 average in the 120 range for who knows how long, because I haven't tested. Maybe 5-6 years, who knows? That's how long I've had these symptoms for, in my memory. And so then I messed around with my eating a bit. I have to do this because, I have to eat a lot of carbs because I burn a ton of carbs. But I did start thinking about it a little bit deeper and started to, realize that, for instance, on an easy ride of an hour in duration, maybe I burn 60 to 80 grams of carbs. But during that ride, I would also eat 60 to 80 grams of carbs. And the part that I didn't, per hour, and the part that I didn't understand was, well, if you kept up with the carb burn, then you don't need to eat a shit ton of carbs after that session. I didn't really understand that. So then I would just slam a shit ton of carbs after the session too. And by shit ton, I mean like 100 plus grams in the meal after, of which case I didn't really need it. You know what I mean? And so then my body has to process that. And then I also, the way that I eat or was eating prior to understanding a bit more is probably the absolute opposite way that one should eat. And that would be very little for breakfast, a little bit for lunch, and then a shit ton for dinner. And because I ate very little for those first 2 meals, I would also prioritize a massive amount of carbs. And as the day goes on, insulin sensitivity, and I saw this in my data, insulin sensitivity goes down, and thus the blood sugar kind of remains elevated. And so then I would eat a shit ton of carbs for dinner, and then I would have dessert, and then I would snack all night on, for the most part, candy. And then I would also, in the middle of the night, I would have Nature Valley bars, and I would eat 1 or 2 every night, which each of those has a whole bunch of shit in it. So then I started to realize, well, there are some things that I could do differently, and let's see what the results of that are. I started having, for instance, overnight oats and putting a ton of calories on that and trying to make breakfast the big meal. And then started to change my eating patterns during exercise, and my mantra being the more power, the more carbs, the less power, the less carbs. And that's throughout the day, really. And so you have to remember, there were days where I would consume 1,000 grams of carbs a day. On a long day, I would consume over 2 pounds of sugar in one day. So I would consume like, I don't know, 500-600 grams in workout, and then another 500-600 grams after workout. And those days weren't even that, those were like aerobic days, you know, they wasn't really burning that many carbs because the intensity wasn't super high. And then eat a bunch of candy too on top of that. And so that's some of the big things that I implemented. And then by the end of the first 10-day period with the continuous glucose monitor, I was able to get my blood sugar average for the 7 days down to the low 100s, which still would be considered to be not normal. It still would be above, let's say, the normal range that you should be in, because, you know, I think you should be spending, well, the entire night under 100 for most people. And then also for most people between meals, you should be, you know, a little while after a meal, you should be under 100 nanograms per deciliter. And thus your average is likely going to be under 100 for the whole day. But I don't even know if that's feasible for an ultra endurance athlete, because we train so frequently and we're also eating so frequently, and we have to eat a ton of carbs. So I was quite happy with how much I was able to elicit change. And that basically, as I've followed this pathway now, and this has been going on, I had that blood test done in November. And so then I began this process basically mid-November, late November, early December. So now we're knocking on the door of like 2 months of behavioral change. And as I've slowly learned more and kind of figured out, don't go so super polarized in one direction, but certainly moving more towards thinking about not eating super processed carbs and stuff. Definitely still eating a shit ton of carbs, but eating a lot of it with fats and proteins and in their their more of natural source instead of in a super highly processed source. I've literally felt my whole life, my whole reality begin to change, because I felt something that I can't remember the last time I felt, which was I was just walking around about to begin a bike and I felt good. And last night I peed 2 times. The night before I peed 1 time in the middle of the night. And I've been sleeping soundly. People have been saying you eat like a bag of shit for a long time, but it's just like anybody, you know, a smoker or something who they know they're smoking and it's going to give them lung cancer, but I don't know why, you just keep smoking until it's an addiction. I mean, it's an addiction. I live in a society where ultra processed foods is like, it's the norm. It's, you know, I would order, my joke is, has been for a long time now, I'm cooking tonight. And I pull out my phone and I say, so what do we want? Jersey Mike's, mod pizza, what do we want? You know, like that's my idea of cooking. And so that's the next phase of my journey, is realizing that I've created this shitty eating culture here in this house. But I've created a culture of laziness, of lazy eating, which involves ordering shitty food, eating grab and go garbage, and snacking on, peanut butter cups all day. And so the next step on this journey now is creating a new culture. First, of course, understanding what I've been doing to myself, which is eating ultra-processed foods that are nutrient devoid. And that's where my tastes are. That's what I crave. I'll crave McDonald's and all of these very processed things, and I'll crave the peanut butter cups and stuff because, of course, my body, I've trained itself to fuel itself on that. And so starting to change the culture from that standpoint, which for me means going to the farmer's market. That's a thing that I want to do. Going to the grocery store, looking around the grocery store, looking at what I'm eating actually, is this actually a food or is this a food-like substance? And then just cultivating a culture of spending more time and energy on these things because it's holistic. I've not spent time and energy on these things very likely because I'm tired and not recovering properly, and therefore I'm lazy and I eat like shit, which adds to me being tired and not recovering properly, and it's just this snowball cyclical thing. Then that's what I have to do because that's the culture that I want to create, because I don't want to die young of diabetes. And I'm headed down that pathway right now. And so that's where I'm at right now. It's fantastic, I must say. I've never felt better in memory, and it's quite rewarding, actually. I'm still like an absolute novice, but I cooked a steak the other day. I've been helping out in the kitchen more, and like anything, I'm new, totally new, but I'm excited to learn. And I'd even one day like to be able to cook something for myself. That would be satisfying. That's the first time I think when you have kids, you start to realize like your mortality a bit. And you also realize like you are ingraining a culture. You are ingraining a way of thinking, a way of being on this little person who they don't really come in with any knowledge. You give all them most of the knowledge they'll have for the first part of their life. And so then it makes you cognizant of your own behaviors a bit better. I care more about my health than about eating shit food. And the thing that I haven't changed is, the big thing is the culture. I have to change the culture in this house around eating. And that starts with me. And so that's where I'm at. And that's what I'm committed to doing as long as it takes to rid myself of the laziness that I have been living for literally as long as I've known Aaron anyhow, which is 14 years.